What is going on, Dolphins Nation? Welcome back to the Dive Bar. We are on episode number 67. Can't believe we made it this far, and I also could believe we made it this far. Thank you for joining us for another night. We have an awesome show. We've been waiting on this one since July. We love the opportunity to get him on, especially after having some film of 2025. We got the first film against the Bears last weekend. We're really excited. Warren Sharp at Sharp Football on Twitter. You definitely know him if you're on Dolphins Twitter or if you're in any type of quarterback Tua conversations. He is giving the breakdown of every single stat that you can possibly imagine. If analytics was defined as a person, it is Warren Sharp. We're going to have some fun tonight. Like I said, he came out with a little DM right before the show and said he's going to have some exclusive information and some exclusive analytics for us regarding this past preseason game. So we're really excited for that. Eric is not here, even though, you know, I got to give Bobby credit. He's going to be producing tonight. Sorry, Eric, but Bobby, roll that tape.
I'm putting the helmet on as always.
The opportunity is right now.
Terrific defensive play. Intercepted. Off the block. Tua on the move. Going deep. Speed race. He's got Hill. He's got Hill. The Dolphins have recaptured the lead.
We finally made it.
In the
Boys,
works
how
since
we
July.
feeling, boys? How we
In the works
feeling?
since
Warren
July.
Sharp in the house.
Let's go.
I tried my damnedest to grow a mustache before you got here, brother. And I tried.
I don't know what you started. I don't know what you started with, but you must have been working on that for a few days. So I think it looks good. I give it a 9 out of 10. You know, A for effort, obviously, and a 9 out of 10. Looks pretty good.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And before we start, a little funny story for you.
Oh God!
So the chat's making a couple jokes regarding Warren Sapp. If you want the backstory on that, I'll actually let Bobby take the wheel on this one.
Oh God! All right, so this isn't all good fun here, Warren. We Joe obviously reaches out to you on the timeline back in June. You're like, all right, circle back in July. We'll make it happen. Well, Joe's like, hell yeah. He replied, guys, look, we got him. And Ghost really doesn't look, and maybe this has happened to you before, but Ghost just kind of goes, holy shit, that's awesome. Like, we could get the kid from Florida too that isn't his son, but everybody confuses it as his son. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? He's like, you know, it's like a joke. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I hear you. I just don't understand what this has to do with Warren Sharp. He was like, it's not his son, but everybody thinks this. And I was like, yeah, dude, I get the joke you're trying to deliver, but like, what's that have to do with Warren Sharp? He was like, oh, this isn't Warren Sapp at all. And I was like, no, did the white man in a tuxedo not give it away? Like, what the hell?
Dude, I had
The,
just
the,
woken
the
up.
quickness of seeing the name definitely gets confused at times with Warren Sapp for sure.
Yeah, then no one's going to let that one
safe
go.
place.
Yeah, no one's going to let that one go.
Well, I say we jump right into the juice. Warren, you watched this game Sunday like everyone else. You've seen the goal line struggles continue like everyone else, and you did some digging. You said there's something to this. What is it? What is going on in Miami that's crushing this short yardage game? What did you find out?
Well, look, this obviously goes back to last football season and the issues that the Dolphins have had in short yardage. And before we started the show, we were talking about it backstage about how this has been going on for a little while now. And, you know, obviously we can talk a little bit later about the issues with the offensive line, and we can talk about the problems that they've had there. But and that's where I would put a lot of the onus, a lot of the blame. And of course, who builds that offensive line is your general manager. And we'll dive into that maybe, no pun intended, in a little bit here. But as it relates to the offense, there is something that you guys actually could do to fix this without bringing in new offensive linemen, because you obviously can't do that before the start of the season, and without dealing with all these new running backs, because obviously we heard Tyreek Hill. He's like, oh, we need to come up with new running backs. These guys aren't the right ones. Well, you could try that a little bit, but there's another easier thing that you could do beyond even that. So let me dig down into it a little bit. Stay with me on this journey here. This is stuff I haven't shared yet, so I got all my notes written down on it. I was researching for about an hour and a half before the show. The last 2 years, you guys lead the NFL in short yardage runs out of 21 personnel. 1 to 2 yards to go. That's what I'm defining by short yardage running back run. 43% of the time, you're using 21 personnel. That ranks number 1 most in the NFL, the highest rate of any team. Only one other team is even above 18%. Okay, so when we're talking about orders here, one team is above 18%. You guys are highest at 43%, not even close to the rest of the NFL. You also rank number 4 in usage of 22 personnel, which is, for most people out there, they already know this, but 2 running backs is the first digit of the personnel grouping, the number of running backs, and then the second digit is the number of tight ends. So 21, 2 running backs, most of the time it's a fullback plus a running back and 1 tight end, or 22 is a fullback, a running back, and 2 tight ends. They love running out of heavy personnel on these sets. They rank 31st in the NFL in rate of runs out of 3 wide receiver sets. They rank number 1 in rate of runs out of 2 or fewer wide receiver sets. So they don't like a lot of wide receivers. They love using this heavier personnel grouping, whether it's 21, 22, etc. Here's the thing. They absolutely suck when they run on these telegraphed short yardage runs out of 21, 22 personnel, out of 21 over the last 2 years. So this incorporates how they were great in 2023 and how they suck in 2024. But just out of 21, those 2 years, 23rd in EPA, 25th in success rate, 20th in yards per carry. In 22 personnel, 23rd in EPA, 23rd in success, 22nd in yards per carry. But when they run from more spread personnel with 3 wide receivers in the game, the very same offensive line with the very same running backs, the very same last 2 years, instead of ranking 23rd or worse, they rank number 1 in EPA, number 2 in success rate, and number 1 in yards per carry. We're talking a shift from one of the worst rushing attacks to the very best in the NFL if they add another wide receiver on the field and give the defense something else to think about rather than expecting a run. So let's look at some of the exact efficiency numbers here. And this is what's really crazy. 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field. So the heavier personnel that they lead the NFL in utilizing. The last 2 years, they rank number 31 in EPA, minus 0.30 EPA per rush. Number 31 in success rate, 42%. Number 21 in yards per carry at 2.6. And this is on the number 1 most runs, 66 of them, out of 2 or fewer wide receivers out on the field. 3+ wide receivers. Number 1 in EPA at plus 0.46. They move from minus 0.3 to plus 0.46 in EPA. They're number 5 in success rate. They move from 42% success all the way up to 67% success. They're number 1 in yards per carry. They move from 2.6 yards per carry to 5.5 yards per carry.
Jesus.
And this is on 24 rushing attempts, which is the 29th most. So it's not like it's like 5 or 7, too small sample size, but it's still not enough to make a difference because they're so good when they run out of this stuff, but they're using the other personnel groupings far too much. If you say, forget 2023, I don't care about 2023, let's just look at 2024 only. In 2024 only, last year, when you ran with 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field, you ranked dead last in EPA, dead last in success, 28th in yards per carry. When you ran with 3+ wide receivers, and we're talking running back runs, number 1 in EPA, number 1 in success, number 10 in yards per carry. Now, I went back and looked at the film on your preseason game this past week. You had 6 running back runs with 1 to 2 yards to go. Want to take a guess as to how many of those runs came with those heavier personnel groupings with just 2 wide receivers?
All of them.
All of them. 100% of them. Now, do you know how many total yards the running backs gained on 6 running back runs out of those?
3.
It's got to be negative. I think it's negative, right? It's got to be negative.
0.
0.
0 yards gained. They averaged minus 0.58 EPA per rush, 0 yards per carry, and 50% success. Those ranked all bottom 10 in the NFL out of all teams in this preseason so far. Obviously, it's quite young, but the issue is here. You guys obviously know this, but for some other people, when you have 2 wide receiver sets out on the field, you got the heavier personnel grouping. You are basically running 75% of the time. The defense is playing with 7 or more man boxes 95% of the time. They're expecting to run. You're running most often, and you're getting nothing out of it. When you put an extra wide receiver out on the field, spread the defense out a little bit more on these short yardage plays. The defense is in 7-man boxes just 31% of the time. So it's far easier for your bad offensive line to block these guys because they're not dealing with as many guys to block. And it's easier for your running backs to figure out where to run the football because they're not being shoved back with contact in the backfield. So, I mean, this is all that it's going to take, in my opinion, if Mike McDaniel were to make this minor change and simply increase the usage of 3 wide receiver sets on short yardage and then run the ball a little bit more out of that, as opposed to, and maybe you utilize some more heavier personnel on short yardage, but you pass the ball out of that because the defense is expecting run and they're loading the box with 7+ box defenders 97% of the time. That's the solution here to help augment, because that's what Mike McDaniel has been doing for years now, is working around the deficiencies that this team has from a personnel perspective. Chris Greer doesn't give him the right guys. He has to work around that in some way, shape, or form. And they're having success as long as Tua is healthy. They need to work around this, and he just cannot simply continue to utilize 2 or fewer wide receivers in these heavier personnel groupings as much as he's doing, because it's going to tank the Dolphins' short yardage run game in 2025, just like it did the past 2 years, especially last year. They've got to make a fix, and this is a very easy fix to make, in my opinion.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
That's why you bring Warren Sharp on your podcast.
I would
That's
have
also
honestly
why he puts a book out every year.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that to fix this short yardage issue is add another wide receiver and don't add another tight end, don't add a heavy personnel, don't add another tackle going in the game. I had no idea about that 3rd wide receiver. I had no idea we were that efficient on the ground with 3 wide receivers on the field.
Yeah, it's the issue, not to interrupt, but the issue, it's the same for a lot of these really good play callers struggle with this because they like, and I'm not suggesting by any means that I know more than they do, but I go back and look last year, read the book, which, by the way, I just want to plug the book. If you want to go get the book, this is the book. This is what those stats weren't in this book, but a lot of the other things that we're going to talk about is in this book, 586 pages. And I'm giving it to everybody who's listening right now. If they haven't picked it up already, for just $1, use the code DIVE, and you can get the PDF of this 586 page book for just $1. Go to sharp.football, enter the code DIVE, and it'll drop the price from $35 down to $1. You won't spend $1 preparing for the season any better than you will if you use it on this book. But in this book on the Rams chapter, I talk about how Sean McVay tries to throw the ball far too much close to the end zone out of because he loves using 3 wide receiver sets, 11 personnel. When you spread the field and all you're doing is throwing the football, it is hard the defense doesn't have to cover much ground. They can get very sticky on some of these wide receivers, and that offense was horrific. If you read the book on short yardage passing last year, and especially end zone passing, Matthew Stafford actually had a good year on early downs, but once he got into the red zone, he was terrible. This has been an issue that's plagued Sean McVay's play calling for years now, is they run so much 11 personnel and they get to the end zone, they want to pass a lot out of it. You got to use what the defense isn't expecting. Spread the field to run, condense it to pass. And Mike McDaniel far too often in these short yardages, condensing it to run and just telegraphing everything to the defense.
Let me say this about the book too. Warren was nice enough, him and his team, to give us all a free copy when we booked him for the show. I looked into it. It's like nothing what you expect, but exactly what you expect. It's 17 pages of just every graph and chart and number you can think of. All these, you know how we always go crazy on Monday mornings about the charts, top right Tua, bottom left Tua. It's got every chart, every graph, every number, 17 full sheets of paper about the Dolphins in this book, and you get it for $1. It's amazing. I looked at all 17 pages. Absolutely worth it.
The
We
funny
got
part is
people
the
already buying.
Dolphins chapter starts on page 377. So that shows you how much is in this book. Before you get to M, you got 376 pages to read.
Yeah, especially if you're into fantasy too, man. To be
Yeah.
able to get a real in-depth look on every team and who you like on the board, and that's pretty neat.
Yeah, fantasy or betting, it's got you covered. Or if you're just a junkie for the Dolphins, or you want to see who the Dolphins are playing, so you want to dig into what I have to say about the Patriots or the Jets, etc., it's all in here.
All right, I
And
wanna-
Warren, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We got a couple of super chats to go over real quick, just so we don't forget about them. John said, Sharp, please slow down with the math. I can see the guys' heads are about to explode. Nice mustache.
Thank you,
And then
John.
Noah Redstone, a regular. Cheers, boys. Another successful show. I do have a little follow-up about the 3 wide receivers. Our biggest or only addition to the wide receiver room this offseason was Nick Westbrook. How much do you think that mattered, or how much would he help? Or was that even their idea there?
The idea, what do you mean by that?
Like, was that maybe something they've realized? And that's kind of like maybe something we're going to see more of.
Because he's known as a great blocker on the outside.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've realized that in terms of their short yardage, because that would be one big trick to pull, is to have 6 plays in week 1 preseason and not do any of what you're going to do during the regular season. And instead, all they're doing is running it in predictable situations and then pull something different. We've heard about coaches, specifically offensive play callers, hiding things in the preseason. That'd be a great trick. I would love it if that were the case. And I am absolutely, look, coaches can easily make tweaks and adjustments. So I think Nick Westbrook could be the guy on the outside to maybe help out a little bit. And look, he's caught his share of jump balls if you need to throw him the ball when you're passing out of, because you can't, when you're running out, when you're spread in 11 personnel, you can't just always run the football. Then the defense is going to pick up. So some of these plays are going to have to be pass plays to keep things balanced. But absolutely, I think bringing in somebody else can't hurt. They just need to get him out there on the field a little bit more in these short yardage situations. I really, really think that would go a long way.
Now, speaking of, the offensive scheme, and we're talking about personnel and stuff like that, we went from 2023 to 2024, vastly different offense. One of the stats, you're probably already aware of it, is that ADOT stat, the average depth of target. Miami was around the top, probably top 5 in 2023. They were near dead last year. You saw the huge, obviously, Tua played 17 games in 2023, big difference. But he did play 13 games last year. But we did see, just as fans, even from that Jaguars game, I know Bobby and those guys were there with me. We're like, this looks a little bit different. And then we got further in the season, and it was just replacing that run game with that screen game. Do you foresee anything where we can kind of get back to that 2023 offense that was electric?
Well, I think a big adjustment was made by Mike McDaniel, having to work around things. And this is why I do think Mike McDaniel is a good coach. I don't think he's a great coach, but so many people hate on him, just like they hate on Tua, without actual factual reasoning to do so. There's some things, obviously, that he needs to improve, no doubt about it. And this is one clear example where if you were just, look, you should have an analytics department that's reviewing everything that happened last season, that should be aware of, top of the list is short yardage rushing. I identified it in my book. I'm not working 24/7 for the Dolphins. You guys know about it. Everybody was talking about it last year. It should be one of the first things they look to fix. You should be able to figure out that spreading the field and passing the ball out of 11 personnel, running the ball out of 11 personnel would help a lot more. And yet we didn't see that in week 1. So I don't know, they've got a lot that they need to work on there from a analytics department side of things, from Mike McDaniel side of things. But the issue, and one of the reasons that I think that they went to such a quick passing game, is because the offensive line was a problem last year. And Mike McDaniel felt such personal, I think, right or wrong, personal responsibility for Tua's health, right? Which was this relatively serious thing league-wide, in my opinion, is Tua, face of the NFL, obviously, should he play anymore? Should he not play? Well, it's up to him. He chooses to play. But it was obviously a big talking point with all the talking heads, Stephen A. Smith, etc., about Tua and his injuries. Coming up with a quick passing game that will get the ball out of his hands even faster, get the ball out to receivers even shorter, not have to have that offensive line hold up and pass pro, which they were not having a lot of success doing. That's one way to ensure that Tua is going to stay relatively healthy. And we already know that you guys don't win games if Tua is not out on the field. So you got to keep Tua out on the field. How do we do it? Let's see if we can get the ball out of his hands even quicker, shorten some of that ADOT so that we're going to be able to keep him upright for as many games as possible. And so for that reason alone, I think, and because I don't believe you fixed the offensive line adequately, maybe from a health perspective, things get a little bit better, but I don't think you've brought in the right guys to fix it to what it should be because you haven't spent. I think you are still going to see a lot of the underneath stuff or the quicker passing, but I hope that they figure out a way to incorporate more of the downfield stuff as well. It just probably is not going to be to the degree that we saw in years past before Tua sustained those injuries.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back to that initial goal line talk that we had. Now, you saying that out of 11 personnel, we're a lot more successful running the ball. Are those inside runs? Are those outside zones? Are those like those tricky sweeps or tosses? That's stuff that we can't really get away with in the goal line. So how do you make that work on the goal line? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So these are only running back runs. So it's not going to involve any sort of wide receiver sweeps or anything like that. This is just only running back runs. And I only am isolating short yardage situations. So like I haven't put in the filter to restrict it only to like within 3 yards of the end zone or something like that. But I believe that in most of the short yardage situations, you're going to face the same elements here in that the more personnel you add in close to your quarterback that are going to act as blockers, the more the defense is going to respond by playing their personnel there. Whereas if you spread the field a little bit more. So I don't know, and I could look at the numbers. What is the rate of outside zone runs? What is the rate of runs up the gut? What are the other types of blocking schemes that they're using on these runs out of 11 personnel? Haven't done that yet. Like I said, after I looked at the film and realized that all of those runs, all 6 of them in short yardage, came with only 2 wide receivers out on the field. That's when I started to run these numbers and come up with this. So there's more work that could be done here for sure. And look, I don't know if you got any fans inside the Dolphins organization who might listen to the show, or you could share some of this with, but they should look into this as well, because I think that they would find, if they dig deeper in the run types or, whether it's goal line or not, they're still going to find that when they run out of 2 wide receiver sets, their rushing sucks. And when they run out of 3 wide receiver sets, it's going to be better. Will it be number 1? I don't know, but it's definitely going to be better than what has been out of these heavier personnel groupings.
So you caused a lot of chaos, for lack of better words, with the Tua threat earlier this offseason. Another time you got Dolphin fans feeling some type of way was when you ranked the front 7 very low. I don't know if certain variables came into that or injured players wasn't included, but where are your thoughts now with the front 7, now that we have a better picture of where everybody's going to be, the draft, everything included? What are your thoughts on the front 7 and maybe the defense as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, we ranked you 19th on the positional unit rankings. Your secondary is obviously the weak link. We ranked at 27th. Your front 7, 19th. I'll tell you that the way that we come up with these personnel rankings for the unit rankings is I have a team of 4 people. One of them is a college guy. One of them is a defensive-minded guy. One of them is an injury guy. And one of them is more of like it's Rich Rebar, our fantasy football maven, who's like great at a lot of different things. They come up with their rankings. They get weighted. They get incorporated. I don't personally rank the units as part of the book because I'm writing so many other aspects of the book and I'm building the book. I put the whole thing together. They come up with the unit rankings. While I think that they're a little bit low on where you probably are in the front seven, and I do think there is a stud or two on that front seven for you guys that can be a difference maker, a game wrecker, a big force. Seiler's one of those guys, obviously, but there are others. I still think that you're a unit that is outside the top 10, but let me ask you guys this. Where do you guys think that you are? Like, how far off is 19th to what you guys believe that you are? Are you guys all in on the same page as to where you guys think that you're ranked?
Well,
Feel like
Joe
you
Robbie, Joe Robbie's probably going to be a little bit higher than me and Bobby, so we'll let Joe Robbie go first.
Go
ahead.
You had to do it to me. No, I think it's a top 10 unit. I think that we worked on the D-line depth. The edges are healthy. I think we have 4 really good edges. I feel like we have a rotation of 5 very solid D linemen. And Jordan Brooks is a monster, in my opinion. I think he's a very underrated linebacker. Curious to see how Willie Gay plays in when we really get to the regular season, but he's had a stellar camp, an absolutely stellar camp. And I liked what I've seen from KJ Britt as well. But as a whole, I mean, if they stay healthy, which is the motto of the Miami Dolphins, I do believe, and I'm not just saying this as a homer, like they are a top 10 front seven.
Yeah, I didn't have like,
What about
it
the rest
wasn't
of you
so
guys?
much that I think we're a top three unit. It's just like I do think we need to be hovering around the 10 area. If it's 12, okay. 19, the one thing our defense does lack secondary right now, but the one thing we all lean on and kind of hang our hat on right now is the front seven, especially with Chubb and Jalen Phillips back and Chubb having a good second half of the year. Siller's back, got an extension. You draft Kenneth Grant. I think where we're also like, we're kind of hanging our hat on that. And then here comes Sharp. Actually, not so much. I think that's what kind of made it hurt so much as far as like the umbrella of the fan base. I don't think, it's a top 3 unit or anything like that. I just think if you would have said 12, people would have said, I get it. Got some guys coming back that were injured.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's just kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I'm more in line with Bobby, and I think the biggest question mark was that defensive line, like because we have 3 rookies that are going to be contributors that we got out of the draft. Obviously, if one thing goes perfect from your draft class, that's a win. But we're expecting not to even mention the offensive line, but the defensive line has to go perfect. And I did like what I saw out of KG, and Jordan Phillips, and even Zeke Biggers played very well at the 5 technique. But yeah, I'd be around that 10. I'd more kind of with Bobby, where if you said 12, but man, I can't stomach bottom half of the league like that.
Yeah. So let me throw a couple of great perspective. I'm learning from you guys too here on this. One thing I'll share. Obviously, last year the book shares that you were the 3rd most injured defensive line.
Sure.
So hopefully that does improve, but you're aware of that. Last year you ranked top 10-ish on a lot of the critical metrics. One that you did not was early down success, which is the ability to force your opponent into 3rd down. You ranked 21st there, but most other stats like run defense, you were 8th best in the NFL. One negative though, or one concern that I would see for your guys' front seven this year is last year you played, by my metrics, the 3rd easiest schedule of opposing rushing attacks.
Yep.
This year, I project you to play a league average 15th most difficult schedule. So that's a big increase in difficulty from the 3rd easiest unit last season. I also showed that you played the 5th easiest schedule of quarterbacks last year. This year, you're right around 18th, so closer to league average. So there is an aspect of, your defense is going to need to step up. Your opponents are a little bit stronger this upcoming season, but with health and with some rookie infusion of talent, hopefully, this unit that was performing at a top 10 level in a lot of metrics last year, maybe that 19 is certainly looks to be a little bit too low. So I'm not going to hold too close to that ranking. I think between this conversation with you guys and kind of how we're looking at the schedule, looks like the talent might be there. They're just going to have to perform even stronger against a stronger schedule.
And I think a big part of that last year is, we did draft Chop Robinson, and instead of bringing him along slowly, he was kind of forced into that early down and pass rush specialist role. Bradley Chubb didn't even play a snap last year, and Jalen Phillips, obviously, one of our better pass rushers on the team, he got hurt a couple weeks into the season. So I think that definitely hurts the metrics a little bit. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that front seven, because that secondary is going to need some help.
And the other thing too, and I've shared this before, but I am such a believer in complementary football in all phases, in all aspects. If you are able to build a lead and play with a lead because your offense is performing well early on in games, then the opponent is playing from behind in the second half of games. They don't have the ability to have run pass balance. They have to get a little bit more pass heavy, while your secondary will struggle maybe against some of those passes. That'll allow your pass rush to pin its ears back and go after that quarterback in far more known passing situations, which obviously is going to help everything for a defense. It can also help your coverage unit when you actually know that a pass is going to come, because then the defense coordinator can figure out the right coverage schemes to get into anticipating a pass, whether as opposed to not knowing whether the opposing quarterback will call a run play or a pass play. So your offense can help here too. Like if the defense struggles in the secondary, it's not just, well, the pass rush has to get there, otherwise we're screwed. Like, let's get our offense to help keep our defense in better situations, convert some of those short yardage situations on offense, so the defense is playing its best while they're sitting out there on the sideline, right? The defense that secondary is not getting exposed if they're getting water from the Gatorade cooler. So that's what the ideal situation for you guys is keep that offense leading games and out on the football field.
And that's a good point too. I never really go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I may, there's something to say about a pass like heavy situation and having Jalen, Phillips, Chubb, Chop, and Sealer all on the field at the same time. It's that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's a great point that we really wasn't in a lot of like obvious passing or big lead situations where we could take advantage of those things. That might be something we've touched on before, but really didn't put it out in context. Like that really does matter, especially with those pass rush numbers. Last thing.
Yeah, if you go to page 393 in my book, which you can get for $1, by the way. If you go on page 393, it shows how you guys ranked from an efficiency perspective on the first drive of games, as well as in the whole first half. And what might be shocking to hear, unless you guys circled this, is that in 2023, in the first half of games, you guys ranked number 1 in yards per play, number 3 in EPA per play, number 3 in rate of touchdowns. Last year, in the first half of games, and I know Tua didn't play all the games, right? But in the first half of games, you ranked 28th in yards per play, 26th in EPA per play, and 30th in touchdown rate. So your metrics fell off dramatically early in games in 2024 versus 2023. And so that is something that I think Mike McDaniel has got to have to improve upon, is his scripts and his early points. This is one thing when I'm advising coaches and talking to offensive coordinators, it's that urgency that you need to have early on in games to put up points as quickly as you possibly can, because the snowball effect that has on the rest of the game is absolutely massive. And you can't underestimate how important it is to build a lead.
Well, Warren, we absolutely appreciate your time tonight. I want to ask you one thing as we head out, but speak for myself. Can't thank you enough, man. This was awesome. First time formally meeting you. Big fan of your work over the years. This was incredible. Thank you so much for all the insight. And I got to say, very impressive. A lot of people come in here, especially a guy at your level, will just say, this is what it is. For you to take feedback and say, hey, I'm learning too. I want to hear your perspective. That's very impressive to me. So appreciate you coming in here and just being open and having a conversation.
I appreciate it. Look, Dolphins, I like talking to all fans because I enjoy the interaction and like hearing what they have to say and their perspectives. Especially, you can never turn off, your tendency or your desire to want to learn something from somebody that you're speaking with. You guys know the Dolphins far better than I do as somebody who doesn't study the Dolphins 24/7. You guys are always thinking about the Dolphins. So, of course, I want to tap into your thoughts, your ideas on different things. I think it's great. But look, I mean, the Dolphins fans in general, it's not been easy to be a Dolphins fan. Let's put it bluntly. The success or lack thereof that you guys have had, the way that, whether it's your head coach or your quarterback getting criticized at times, most of the time, in fact, unfairly, in my opinion, that it calluses you. It makes it a little bit. You have to be a little bit tougher. And so I enjoy sharing some of the stuff that I uncover, and I hope. The one thing I want to tell you just in leaving here is that I think the best quality of a fan is to be willing to be critical of your team when you should be critical. There are far too many fans out there that will defend to the death anything about their team. They will argue with any other fan base out there all the time, defending everything. And yet, if they looked inwardly at their team and acknowledge that there's some issues, speaking about those to allow there to be a discussion and discourse around that so that those things could maybe get fixed is the way that you're ultimately going to find the most success for your team to get better and for your team to improve. And so there are going to be times like this offseason, I'm very complimentary about a lot of things about Tua and the Dolphins, but there's things to be critical about as well. And during the season, I can assure you, if you start following me from this show, there are going to be times when I'm going to be critical of the Dolphins, and take none of that personally. I'm just doing a lot of research and sharing my opinions and my analysis, and it's not always going to even be correct, but it's always going to be researched and thought out. And the best thing is to be able to adjust and adapt and to mold it moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit of Dolphins football with you guys. And, obviously I wish you guys nothing but the best. Good luck this season.
Oh yeah. Any final thoughts, boys?
No, that was definitely a lesson. And one of my buddies, he shot me a text. He's like, a calculus lesson on the dive bar right now. So that was awesome. We don't really, I don't think we've had really like an analytical guy on the podcast yet. And it's really just to hear just the lexicon you're using, just the vocabulary, and just how deep this book goes, and how deeply your knowledge of the game and some of those Moneyball stats and that exclusive stat you brought us today. That's awesome. And it's something that I'm going to carry that. And I'm sure that people that are watching right now are going to carry that into the games and look for that in the games now. Like we're looking for a 3 wide receiver set on 4th and goal right now.
For sure.
For sure.
100%.
And it goes a long way too. Like you said, you make time for these podcasts because these people, they need to know the human behind the guy pissing them off on Twitter with their graphs. I think that really, not being funny, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. I think that it gets overlooked a lot of times when they just see the guy trying to get clicks, so they say, and they don't realize this guy's doing his job. Like, he's digging into 32 teams as deep as he can and trying to be as accurate as he can. But sometimes you miss, it's like.
Yeah, that's a challenge with this book. I take writing this book very seriously. That's why it takes months, and that's why it's 586 pages, is because I cannot come out there with the book and just share what everybody already knows. Mm-hmm. Everybody expects more of me than that. And I'm always digging into things because people at all levels end up reading this book. There are people in front offices. There are people in the analytics departments of these teams that contact me that want a copy of the book, that are reading the book. I know a lot of the people out there within teams are reading this book, and they want to know what I have to say about their team. They want to know what I'm saying about other teams as well. They want to know how we're evaluating certain players. And so, it's a lot of work to try to come up with things that are going to be a little bit, not necessarily different intentionally, but trying to dig deeper at the truth rather than just the surface level story that a lot of people are discussing. And so the other thing we try to do, though, is break it down into a lowest common denominator so that people can understand it. We're not going to try to get so deep into the weeds with some of these discussion points that it goes over people's heads and they don't know what we're talking about. So even if you're a more casual fan or you're not as deep into the analytics, this book is going to break it all down for you in quite an easy manner. So like you guys said, I'm going to be focusing a lot on the Dolphins and what they do in short yardage this year and what their personnel groupings are. It's going to be fun to study them, and some of the ADOT stuff that we were discussing earlier about Tua and whether they expand that, some of the snaps and the rushing success that the Dolphins have when Westbrook-Ikini's out on the field. All these different things are going to be something that I'm going to be tweeting about this season, and I'm excited to see what ends up happening. So I appreciate it.
You're out there on
Warren Sharp, baby. Y'all make sure to show Warren Sharp some love this season. Support his stuff. A lot of hard work goes into it.
These Twitter
I might
streets.
not ever shave this mustache. I'm gonna let it ride.
Next year when we do
Looks
this
good.
again, y'all can compare.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
happy to join you guys, and we'll do it again soon. Let me know, and I'll try to make time.
Absolutely.
yeah.
man. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Appreciate everybody
All
coming
right.
through.